slogan that we have in the Herbert family called the 8 W's.
Mm-hmm.
Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. And so my dad said, you can wish for this, you wish something different, change, wish I had this, wish I had that. You can wish your life away, or you can roll up your sleeves and get to work and control your destiny. Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't.
Today's guest is former Governor Gary Herbert. He's the former governor of Utah, and this conversation is really about leadership. Not the talking points, but what it's actually like to make decisions that affect a lot of people. We talk about listening, tone, compromise, and why real leadership isn't about winning arguments, but about bringing people together. I'm Samuel Law, and this is The Growth Apprentice. So, Governor Herbert, after being out of office for a while at this point, what lessons did you learn that most people don't see, and what's it like being in office that no one sees?
Well, first, let me just express my gratitude for the opportunity I've had to be governor of a great state, and probably in my mind, the greatest state in the union right now today. We're number one in most every positive way of a lot of different issues. So the people here are conducive for self-government. We're become the best place in America for business, to raise families, to start a business. Our educational achievements have moved up dramatically. And consequently, a lot of people are moving into Utah, which is another challenge. It's the challenge of growth. Maybe we can talk about that a little later on. But it's been a great opportunity to be the 17th governor, something I never planned on when I was growing up. But you never know what's around the corner. And this is, I have on my wall here for Gary Herbert, a very improbable journey. That being said, probably a lot of lessons learned. How do you lead? How do you get people to follow? Good leadership should be able to persuade people to follow you. I learned early on that I'm not ashamed of what I am politically. I'm a right of center. I associate with the Republican Party. I make no bones or apologies about it. I think that's the platform that gives us the best outcomes that we're all looking for, whatever the subject is: economic growth and development, energy development, education, infrastructure needs, whatever the role of government should play in our lives. We do a very good job of it here in Utah, and I think it's best found in the right of center approach. Smaller government, more private enterprise. Secondly, though, I'm moderate in tone. I don't call people names. I don't denigrate them because they don't agree with me. I'm always interested in different points of view and see if I can learn something. I think that's the way we should be with our fellow man, and respect their difference of opinion and see what we can glean from a dialogue and discussion with them to maybe make the future better and brighter for the people we represent. So I'm moderate in tone, but I'm also inclusive in process. If we're going to solve problems, we need to sit down together and have dialogue, have discussion, healthy, respectful debate, and see if we can't come together and find common ground to get some things done. I look to our founding fathers as a good example of that. They were wise men. They had differences of opinion significantly. They made compromise and created in that process the greatest government document ever in the history of the world. And they compromised. In fact, it was referred to by many as a bundle of compromises. So when we hear from some of our elected officials, well, I'm not going to compromise, they're not following in the footsteps of our founding fathers, and that ought to be a concern. So again, conservative is where I find myself politically, moderate in tone, and inclusive in process. That's what I've learned.
Talking more on inclusive in process, hearing from a lot of different people and, trying to get to the truth. Are there experiences you had as a kid where you realized it was important to really listen to other people?
I think if you want to make friends, if you want to have people that you associate with comfortably and enjoy that association, there ought to be some amount of respect and decorum given to listening to other people's points of view. You've heard the old adage, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should listen twice as much as we speak, and probably in doing so we'll learn things and be able to express better values and principles and policies moving forwards. Um, I was a little shy when I grew up, but I listened a lot, and I think that helped me to become more informed. And my friends liked the fact that they could talk and I would listen. So just growing up and gathering friends, I was never really on the political side of this. I wasn't class president. I wasn't student body president. Wasn't even homeroom chairman, you know. But I did have a number of friends, and I think part was because I was willing to listen and not judge what they were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, listening, has it gotten better over the years? Have you learned any, practical skills to better
Uh,
understand people?
for me personally, certainly I'm more inclined to listen. I think sometimes we're too anxious to give a rebuttal, and we don't hear what they're saying to even know what to rebut. So we ought to be a little bit patient in how we approach things, and certainly if we're trying to resolve an issue and come together and find common ground so that together we can work out a problem or develop a policy or in fact address some of the challenges of the day. It's much better if we are working together as opposed to me in opposition to you pulling in different directions. It's like hitching up the horses to the plow. We have all the 3 or 4 horses pulling the same direction. It's a lot easier. We have a couple of them pulling north, a couple of them pulling south. We may be at a standstill and not plow any ground. We see that a lot in Congress.
Yeah. Yeah. There was an event done recently where we had a Republican senator and a Democrat senator come, and they had an open dialogue. What's the benefit of learning how to talk with people who we don't share the same beliefs as them?
First off, we need to come to the table thinking in terms of we probably do share a lot of similarities, a lot of beliefs that we agree on. What I found out, for example, just talking about Republican versus Democrat, the goals that we have as Republicans, the outcomes we desire, are pretty much the same. We want to have a better education system. We want to have it accessible by everybody in all economic stratas to have access to a good quality education. We differ, though, on how we get that. How much money do we spend? We have charter schools, we have private schools, we have vouchers. Does all the money have to be spent on just public education only? How many in a classroom? What do we do to prepare the teachers? How do our principals navigate that? Our superintendents? Our local school boards are elected. Are they on the same page with the state school board, which is elected to oversee the entire state in 41 districts? So there's a lot of things we talk about there with education. We agree on a lot of them, and certainly on the outcomes we desire. The process sometimes is different of how to get there. So again, what I've learned and what I've practiced was I'll sit down with the Democrats once a week. What's on your mind? What are some of your burning issues? What can I do to help? See where we agree, and we'll see if we can pull together. If we disagree, maybe you can persuade me to modify. Maybe I can persuade you to modify, and we'll pull together.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about how the Constitution earlier is, a bundle of compromises. Were there compromises you ever had to make while you were governor?
Oh, I'd have to think about that. I'm sure that there are compromises we made in coming together. And so, for example, if we're going to have a tax cut, and we've cut the taxes many times in Utah, we're very competitive on our tax rates. We're on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to property taxes, for example. But how much we cut 1%, 0.5%. Those end up being maybe 0.4%. Those end up being compromises. Some tax cuts better than no tax cut at all, you could say. Or it could be that too big of a tax cut is too much based on the demands we have for education, transportation, roads, water development, things that we need to think in terms of the long term.
Yeah.
And so when I came into office, for example, they were not spending near as much money as they should on roads. And we are a fast-growing state and became even faster with our economic prosperity. But they were spending about $65 million. The year before that, $64 million. But they were not paying not only to not build more roads, but it didn't maintain the roads we had. So we ended up having to come up with a proposal on how much money we would put into transportation. And of course, the number that we went to probably in the first year was about $500 million. So that's quite a jump from $65 million, in order to take care of maintenance of roads and build new capacity because of the growth that's taking place in the state of Utah. We had to come and compromise with a number. So that was certainly a compromise. Principles, not so much. The party platforms for both parties, similar, again, different approaches, but we didn't have to really sacrifice principles in order to get things done. And again, I happen to have the good fortune of being a Republican governor in a state that's controlled in the Senate by a supermajority of Republicans and in the House by a supermajority of Republicans. So it made things a little bit easier to get done. And the values and principles espoused by the Republican Party actually have proven to be very good for us to have a positive outcome, as we now have the most healthy, diverse economy in America today. And that's coming out of the Great Recession when I was put into office in 2009. And our education system has improved dramatically. For example, right now, the U.S. News and World Report has listed the education system in Utah at the second best state in America, second only to Massachusetts, which has perennially been number one. So our education system has improved. Our environmental issues, cleaner air, we're doing a better job of protecting our landscape and our water. So environmental issues has been good. Infrastructure, I mean, the progress we've made on every front has been one that's been very positive. And so again, maybe compromise on some of the details, but not in the principles and the values.
Yeah. Why do you think Utah's economy is so strong?
It's like a garden. My dad was a big gardener, and he had about a half an acre of garden that he used to raise his vegetables and probably raise boys. And I asked him once why his garden was so productive. And he said, if you're going to have a productive garden, you've got to have good soil. And I said, well, what does that mean? Well, you have good soil that has nutrients, it doesn't have weeds. We pull the weeds, we fertilize. And with the good soil, even if you have marginal seeds, they'll germinate and they'll blossom. You'll have a harvest in the fall. May not be as good if you had good seeds, but still, good seeds, you have even better harvest. Bad seeds, you still have a harvest. The key is the soil. So I use that as kind of a metaphor. We created a soil, an environment in Utah that was conducive to business by having competitive tax rates. We had regulation reform, so we're not burdened by a lot of government red tape. We've said, in the essence of those two, we want to keep government off your backs and out of your wallets. And we've done a good job. And consequently, because of that, people want to plant their seeds in a fertile environment, bring their entrepreneurial business seeds to Utah. We were named at one time the epicenter for small business in America, here in Utah. And you can't be a large business if you're not first a small business. So having a lot of startups, people get into the business of business, has been a good, healthy thing. And the results have been remarkable. We have the lowest poverty rate, for example, in America. And so that means that all boats on the pond are being raised up with the growing, healthy economy. So all the things that make it a conducive, fertile ground for business is what we've done in Utah and continue to do so in Utah. That's why our economy is so healthy and diversified.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking a little bit about, work on the farm, and, where did you learn how to work and such strong work ethic?
My dad was the hardest worker I ever knew. He was raised on a farm in Idaho, and his mother died when he was about 7 or 8. But he was kind of the oldest boy in the family. He had 4 sisters and 1 younger brother, and they had to run the farm. There was nobody else, and so he did that. He started driving the bus to school when he was 16, if you can imagine that. And I know one example. The first day of school, his dad said, "Can't go to school tomorrow because we've got to plow the South 40, and we've got to get it done before the storm comes in. We've got to take care of it, do some harvesting and planting." And he said, "But Dad, tomorrow's the first day of school. I want to go to school." And I said, "Well, being a farm kid, you can't do it." Well, my dad, they went to bed, and my dad thought, well, there's another way to do this. So he got out of his bed, out of his room, snuck out of the house, went down to South 40, turned on the tractor, and he plowed all night long till he got the 40 acres all plowed up. He got back around 6:30 in the morning, just as his dad's getting up. He says, okay, well, get ready. We got to go down and get that South 40 plowed. And Dad said, Dad, it's already done. I did it last night. I'm on my way to school. Thank you very much. So that's he was just a hard worker. He was just a hard worker. Everybody knows it. He got from his dad, who was a hard worker also, the slogan that we have in the Herbert family called the 8 W's.
Mm-hmm.
Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. And so my dad said, you can wish for this, you wish something was different, change, wish I had this, wish I had that. You can wish your life away, or you can roll up your sleeves and get to work and control your destiny. Work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. And so I learned my work ethic from my dad.
Yeah. Do you think kids these days are not learning enough work ethic just because everything's a lot more accessible, and because of abundance, the need to work isn't as high?
Well, we're spoiled.
Yeah.
We have a great standard of living. When I think in my own lifetime, I remember when you had to call and talk to an operator to make a phone call. It was calling from Orem to American Fork was long distance. I remember in a third grade class, they had someone come in and teach us how to use a rotary dial phone. Do you even know what a rotary dial phone is?
I do. I've never used one, but yeah.
Okay. Well, things have changed dramatically. The automobiles, the homes are probably 3 or 4 times bigger on average than what we had, 70 years ago. So times have changed, and we've elevated our quality of life. The hard dreariness of work, particularly, is exhibited on the farm, and where you had to hook up the horse with the oxen, or to pull the plow, a spade and shovel work. And now we have tractors, air-conditioned tractors that do everything, dig it up, harvest it, wrap it up, and bail it out.
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier. And what it used to take 100 people to do to raise enough food for one person, now it's one. What one person can do for one person, for 100 people.
Yeah.
It's just the reverse. And so the production that we see in life, in our lifestyle, is increased dramatically. Our salaries have gone up by probably 400% in the last 100 years. Our leisure time has increased dramatically. You don't have to work, 24/7. You get time off. So in every way we can measure, we have a much better quality of life, better health care, we live longer. 100 years ago, you'd have 1 in 10 children born would die. 1 in 10, 10%. Now it's about 1 out of 150 or 160. So longevity, we lived 25 years longer on average than we did, 100 years ago. So everything's improved. I just hope we don't take it for granted, that we appreciate it, are grateful for it, and use our extra leisure time to give back to the community and help elevate somebody who's maybe less fortunate.
Yeah. I personally find, a lot of joy in work and, doing something really well. And, being homeschooled, I have a lot of free time, and, a lot of people have more free time these days, but what they'll do with it is they'll just spend it online, and they'll do unproductive things, which leads to, higher rates of depression and a less productive society of youth. What do you think the youth should be spending their leisure time doing?
Well, I'm a big leisure time guy. I think you should have planned into your weekly responsibilities some time for leisure, however you define that. I don't mind going out, for example, and reading a book. I go on vacation with my wife and family, and I usually always take a book or two along with me that in my leisure time and my vacation, I can read a book. It could be fiction. I read mostly nonfiction, but whatever you like to do that's leisurely. I also, I'm a big sports guy. I played football. I played quarterback in high school. I played point guard for the basketball team. and I played third base and pitcher for the baseball team. And those are skills I developed of teamwork, of practice makes perfect. I've actually gone out and tried to become better and better and better. Those are good disciplines for anything in life. Practice makes perfect. Study, become learned, know more and more, get better equipped to contribute. We talk about education and we talk about alignment. We want to make sure you have the skill set that you can sell in the marketplace. So having your education plan, say, what is they need? We need a lot of computers. They need a lot of scientists. They need a lot of engineers. We need a lot of people that are plumbing, electrical mechanics, technicians for computers. There's a need for those. We call them our STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math. We have a big need for people in those disciplines. And we've also added in Utah thanks to my good wife, the First Lady. So we call it not STEM, we call it STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Found arts is really a good thing to help open up your brain's creativity. And if you have some creativity, can think outside the box with some critical thinking, you'll be a better scientist, you'll be a better artist, you'll be a better whatever. And so we have great opportunity to spend our time improving ourselves. And leisures, should be a chance to decompress and improve yourself. Reading, sports, cheering on your favorite team. The good news is very few people have to work, and probably very few people do work more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah. You said before that education is one of the best, or is the best investment that a state could make because, it leads to a better future. Why do you think it's why is it such a good investment to invest in education?
Well, in education, if we looked at the state budget, the largest component part of the state budget has to do with education. It's how you develop your seed corn. That's the rising generation. If we want them to be productive, if we want them to perpetuate a good and improving society, education is a key component to that. There's many ways to get education. You're homeschooled, but we have public education that most people are taking. We have a good education system here in the state of Utah. We have great charter schools. We have great private schools. And we have good homeschoolers. So any of the above, pick whichever one you think fits good for you. I'm a big believer in choice. And what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. So providing opportunity for choice. When I went around the state, I would talk to the young people and say, if you want a good education, you'll get a good job. If you want a good job, get a good education. If you get a good education, you're going to qualify for a good job. And again, part of the things I worked for when I was there was to make sure we had better counseling, not just for the mental health and the health issues, but counseling to say to somebody, okay, you're in third grade. Here's where your scores are. What do you want to be when you grow up? That might be a little early to decide at third grade, but start thinking about what you want to be when you get through high school. You might have a good idea of what you want to do and be. And also, part of that formula is, do you make enough money to make a living? You could have a PhD in whatever, and for some of the PhDs out there, because there's not a need for their education and their skills from that education, we say the most prominent words coming out of a PhD's mouth in that discipline might be, well, you have fries with that hamburger. There just isn't another job there, so they're taking a more of a menial work. So that, and your parents can help with that. Our counselors can help. So we hope that every student gets pointed in the right direction where they'll have fun, enjoy their job, and be productive and contribute back to society and live the American dream. That's really what it's all about. And if you like what you're doing, every day's a holiday. I like what I'm doing. I enjoy coming into work.
Yeah. What skills do you see being important that the rising generation learns?
The number one toughest thing in life is communication. Talk about it. We all use it. We speak and communicate in various ways, some better than others. But communication is hard, certainly to get the right ideas across and to tell people exactly what you're trying to have them to understand, whether that's husbands and wives communicating back and forth. That sometimes is a challenge. How are we going to raise the kids? And your sons aren't doing good, and your daughters. There can be some tension there because of poor communication. So, parents, husbands and wives, parents to children, neighbors to neighbors, politicians to constituents, doctors to their patients. I mean, it's all about communication. Take 2 pills and call me in the morning, the doctor says. Well, which 2 pills do you want? And why is it 2? Why not 3? What if I take it at noon? Does it make a difference if I take it in the morning? Again, those are communication ideas that sometimes we don't convey as precisely, as accurately as possible. So if I was going to say one thing, you need to learn how to communicate. Unfortunately, today, it's hard because everybody's got a device in their hand that does the communicating for them. In abbreviations, we have algorithms that you pick up on the internet, which reinforces your biases, as opposed to you having an open mind and access to a broad spectrum of thought. You have maybe a narrow spectrum. Cable television, we communicate with TV dramatically. If you're a Republican right now and you want advocacy, you go to Fox. If you're a Democrat and you want advocacy, you want to go to MSNBC. Now, all you hear is the extremes of both of those channels. That may not give you a very good, broad view of the world and what's taking place on policy and why it's being made or not made, and the confrontation we see with the people on different sides of the aisle in politics. How being able to communicate is getting tougher and tougher. I remember talking to a young man, asking if he's going to his senior prom, and he says, "Nope, I'm going to go to it, but I'm not going to have a date." His wife, he says, "We don't know how to communicate with each other anymore." You go into rooms and everybody's looking down at their phone. Rather than communicate, say, "How you doing? What's your name?" "I'm Gary. Pleased to meet you."
Yeah.
"What are you doing here?" "Well, I'm doing this." "What are you going to do?" Having just a pleasant exchange of kindness and thought, and we're losing that art. We talk. I mean, I remember being in a room once where we had a dinner. After dinner, everybody went down into the family room, and every one of the people in the family room had an iPhone. They were looking at and talking to people, and some of them were talking to people in the same room.
Yeah.
So that's the one I hope we can learn. Obviously, the STEM programs and English and history and science and technology, engineering, math, all those things that go to giving a good, well-rounded education are important. But learn how to communicate. You'll find that people want to hire you.
Yeah. I keep seeing that over and over again, that communication seems to be a fundamental skill that everyone needs to learn. Have you seen any principles of effective communication?
Well, we're always kind of learning.
Yeah.
And preparation, if you have to give a talk in church or some civic area, to get up to the podium and say, "Now, what's the topic? What am I supposed to talk about?" That's probably not the time to ask those questions. If they ask you to speak, say, "Okay, next Tuesday, what's the topic? How much time do I have? What's the end result? What we're trying to accomplish here?" Steve Covey, my old friend who's passed away, said, "Start with the end in mind. What do we want the outcome to be, and then work backwards. And that'll make sure you're prepared to give good thoughts and ideas and communicate accurately with your audience." But preparation. An ounce of preparation, Benjamin Franklin says, worth a pound of cure. Boy Scout motto is be prepared. And that's probably a good comment for how we do our life. Prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah. As you think back on your time spent in office, is there anything you wish that constituents understood better?
There's always ups and downs. Being governor is hard work. It's not easy. You kind of have the weight of the world sort of for your state, and you're the one guy. But the one that probably my hardest year was 2020, which was COVID. And so I have people all the time that say, if you had it to do over again, you said that the COVID year was your toughest year. Not only was it the toughest year, maybe the toughest year, period. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. That's how bad it was. But they asked me, if you had to do over again, would you do the same thing? And I said, knowing what I know now, I would do some things differently. But we didn't know that then.
Yeah.
It was a new virus, and so I went with the best science that we had, relying mainly on people from Utah. I wasn't looking to national people. We had a conference call, President Trump and Vice President Pence, sometimes every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Sometimes it cut down to 2 or 3 times a week. But we're in constant communication with not only the president, the vice president, and directors of health, but all the other governors in all the other 49 states and 5 territories. So that was a hard time, and unfortunately, people were not patient. They're anxious, they were scared, people were dying, and who's to blame, and what do we point the fingers? And so that was a hard time to communicate with people, to let them know. I had a fellow who was very loud in criticizing me during COVID. I was at a function, and actually, I think President Trump was coming in to visit, and he pulled me aside. He said, "I need to apologize." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because I crossed the line with the criticism I gave to you as governor." And we talked about some of the things he didn't like. For example, he didn't like us making people in school wear masks. I said, "Well, I didn't like having it either, but I had to get the teachers in school." He didn't realize that. The masks were not just to protect the students. That was pretty much secondary. It was not as big a problem for younger people as for older people. So, but I wanted the teachers, I've got to keep the schools open. I want to close down. I want to keep businesses open. So we didn't close down, but we made the teachers feel safe. We said, you know what? We'll make the classroom at the schools the safest place you can be. We developed protocol. We had mask wearing so that the teachers would go back in the classroom and teach. And he had no idea about that. He just mad because I had masks. He didn't realize the underlying cause. He thought it was because we were trying to protect the kids. That did probably some residual, but that was secondary. I needed to have the teachers go back and teach and make it so that they were not afraid. And so that was unfortunate. I had a press conference for the first while every day to give them up to date so that people knew I'm on top of it. I know what's going on. I'm sharing with you so you know exactly up to the minute what we're doing. And that was an attempt to make sure we had good communication, and that worked pretty well. But even, with all the people in Utah, I got a letter from some lady in the southern part of the state that addressed to me, and addressed it to Hitler Herbert. And I didn't kill 6 million Jews. I mean, that's just so over the top. But that was her reaction. Well, that's not a good way to communicate. So again, that's an area where the communication could have been better in COVID on probably all sides of the issue, and a lost opportunity to do things maybe a little better. Maybe the next time we have a pandemic, we'll do better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Governor Herbert, thank you for giving me your time today. If you could share one last message with everyone listening, what would you want that to be?
Well, we just finished having Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. I like turkey, number one. But it's a time for us to sit back and really kind of an unrushed way, because you've got Thanksgiving on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, you kind of have a long weekend. A chance to kind of reflect on what we're grateful for. We have so many things. When I say my prayers, I thank the good Lord for the blessings He's given me, those that I know and those that I don't know. A lot of blessings I probably received that I didn't know was a blessing at the time. Maybe later on it'll be made known unto me why. But we have a lot of blessings as Utahns, and certainly as Americans. We live in the greatest country in the world. We have freedom that we enjoy. We talk about liberty and freedom. We sometimes forget to add to it, along with personal responsibility that goes hand in hand with liberty and freedom. John Adams talked about our Constitution was made for only a religious and moral people. It's wholly inadequate for any other. Again, it's self-control, it's self-decision making, it's freedom and liberty for you to make the right decision. And so having some core inside us that tells this is right, this is wrong, choose the right is an important aspect. So if we're going to have a good life, we got to be grateful for the opportunities we're given. Doesn't mean there's not be hardships in life, the ups and downs of mortality, but it's something we should never take for granted, and we should try to perpetuate that for the rising generation. I like the Utah story, the heritage we have from our pioneer ancestors that came along here and smoothed out the trail for those who came after. I hope that we, as current pioneers, smooth out the road for the next generation of pioneers that are going to come on the scene, whether they're naturally born here or in migrate from other places in the country or the world to Utah. Let's make sure we do our part to smooth out the trail for them to make life better for them, like our ancestors did for us. If we do that, Utah will remain the best place in America to live, to raise a family, and to do business.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast today, Governor Herbert. It's been a pleasure.